Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining us for today for the webinar on cybersecurity in supply chain, start with prevention. I'm your host for tonight, and we are almost starting our roundtable on the topic today. As we all know, we live in a digital era right now, and supply chains are becoming increasingly dynamic and complex with multiple vendors, suppliers, and parts involved. The complexity brings an increased risks of cybersecurity threats, which can have severe consequences on the overall supply chain and business operations and can impact our daily-to-daily lives as a society. In this event, we will discuss about the best practices and strategies for preventing cyber attacks in the supply chain, and we will focus on four main themes. Before we go there, please drop a like if you are watching us from YouTube or LinkedIn, and feel free to comment. We will have a question and answer session in the end where you can also put your questions to our speakers. So don't be shy, please. We can delay a little bit because I'm seeing everyone joining now. So let's talk about the four themes that we are going to address tonight. First one, we are going to address assessing third-party risks. So we are going to learn how we can identify risks, we can mitigate risks, and also accept some risks. We are going to see the differences between third parties, SaaS cloud solutions versus on-premise, and we are going to address MSSPs and external security providers, the risks on this as well. And of course, we are going to focus on ethical hacking. And of course, I'm a little bit biased here as CEO of Ethiack, but we are going to see how ethical hacking is the most cost-effective solution and the better way to prevent cyber attacks. In the end, we will have this session question and answer. So please, if you are watching, just drop the questions on the chat. We have our team to pick and select the best comments and questions, and we are going to ask our speakers to answer them before the close of the session. And also we are going to have a little bit talk after the end of the roundtable about Ethiack and about how can our product help you prevent cyber attacks in the supply chain. So without further delay, I think I can present our speakers. We'll have a lot of different backgrounds here. We have speakers that from different perspectives. We have people that manage large supply chains with thousands of providers and suppliers, and people who develop systems to optimize these supply chains. So the providers and suppliers of the supply chain management systems, let's say like this. And we also have ethical hackers. So we can also have the perspective of the person who is attacking the systems for ethical reasons, of course, to identify the vulnerabilities on the systems so we can better protect them, right? So whether you are a CEO, a CISO, a CIO, a cybersecurity professional, or even someone just connected to the supply chain that is working there, I believe you can gain a lot of knowledge from today's roundtable, and you can get new insights. And I hope this will be useful for you and informative. But please don't forget to follow us, to give us that like, give us that comments. And if you have any doubts, don't forget to comment on the chat. And I think we can start by presenting people. So the first speaker that we have today is Rafael Carvalho. Rafael is an experienced DevOps engineer who enjoys working in agile developments, is working now on MIXMOVE, and is responsible for managing cloud infrastructure and solution delivery pipeline. And MIXMOVE is basically a platform for logistics optimization, supply chain optimization. And so Rafael will also play the perspective of the supplier. Hello, Rafael. Nice to have you here.
Hello everyone. Nice to be here. Yeah, MIXMOVE it's a large software as a service company that we have a really large clients, and we deliver all the logistic platform for these clients. And Ethiack is a really valuable partner of our security journey in the cloud environment.
Thank you, Rafael. MIXMOVE already has the ISO also implemented, so it was a long process. And we can also talk a little bit about that. I think it will be nice to know how you guys are dealing with that. The next speaker will be Luís Valente. He's a cybersecurity manager at MC Sonae. He has previously coordinated the Computer Security Center at the University of Porto for more than 5 years, and is also guest lecturer in several university institutions such as ESP Gaia, Ethiack, Porto Business School. So he has a lot of background in training in the cybersecurity area, and his background is network engineering and computer systems. Here he plays the perspective of the manager of a user organization in the retail that deals every day with supply chain, right? And there is multiple providers, and the cyber attack could impact the daily of millions of people. Am I right, Luís?
Yes, you're right, George. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon for today. Yes, MC, that maybe it's more usually known by Continent. It's our branch of Sonae Group for food retail, essential. But it is a company that serves more than a quarter of market in the retail food sector. And we have more than 4 million clients, for example, in our loyalty card. So a small problem in all these different the warehouses process, the stores process, or the loyalty process have a huge impact for a lot of people in the market. We also are a very innovative company. So we opened the first autonomous store in Europe. So you can go to the shops and buy your product, choose your products, and get out of the store without losing time on the cashiers. So we are always trying to push and deal with different technologies and trying to get a better user experience for our clients.
Thank you, Luís. I think it's Sonae is working with a lot of solutions, and I think it will be nice to talk a little bit on you guys deal with all these risks, right? And the last speaker will be José. José Moreira is application security analyst at FARFETCH. Beyond his passion for information security and hacking, is basically application security analyst, but I know more himself from his crazy hacking experience. He's one of the best hackers that I have the pleasure to meet. And he has worked a lot as a security auditor for other companies, such as Agile InfoSec, Checkmarks, and so many others. And I think he has more vulnerabilities that I can count. So nice to have you here, José. And I hope you can give your perspective as an hacker to this panel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite. You bring us a really interesting topic today. And for me, as I have been already in the two sides of this view that we are trying to discuss, as an hacker, sometimes you find some vulnerability in the third party and you report it, and then you have the follow-up of the vulnerability with the client, and you're trying to discuss the impact of this third party to the client. And it's always interesting to understand how they fix this vulnerability, because sometimes it's not easy, but in this point, hackers always want to fix the vulnerability because they have reported it. And in the same subject, also work on the other side as someone that is on the client and receives a vulnerability from the third party, and it's also very interesting to deal with this matter inside, because our perspective changes a lot, and in this side you're trying to secure your company, and also you have the things that you don't see as a pure hacker, and you need to talk with the developers, you need to understand the business, the context, so we can find a solution that could fix this third party, that sometimes we can get a fix or not, because we will depend on the third party, but it's always interesting to deal with this.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to have like these both ways of looking to the same subject, right? So yeah, thank you so much for having here. And finally, I will present our moderator for today, and it will be André Baptista. André Baptista is the CTO of Ethiack. He's also an hacker, an ethical hacker. He has more than 10 years experience on ethical hacking. He's an invited professor at the University of Porto in information security, and has won multiple international awards. Some in Portugal call him the Cristiano Ronaldo of cybersecurity. It's what it is, and it's really good to have you here to basically moderate this debate and make these people think a little bit more about cybersecurity, and basically push them to tell us the best insights that they have in different perspectives. So without further delays, André, I let you present all these panel, the topics, and make questions, and I see you guys at the end. And please, everyone, have a nice evening.
Hey, so let's get started. Thank you, George, for the intros. That was really awesome. All right, so I'm very honored to be moderating today's panel. Also, it's a first for me to be a moderator. I'm usually on the other side, so bear with me. For today, as we all know, cybercrime is rising as we depend more and more on technology. So especially when we focus on supply chain, we must consider that our goods and our services depend on all of these solutions, on technology. So a serious disruption can have a serious impact on society itself. So it's very important to stay up to date with security and to have open and honest discussions within the security community and contribute to it. So we all have a role to play nowadays in keeping our organization safe, our customers, our people, and we must share this knowledge to achieve this goal all together. So I'm very excited to hear from our panelists today, and I hope that this discussion will bring some knowledge to the attendees to improve the security posture on their organizations towards a safer digital world. So thank you all for joining us today, and let your friends know or your colleagues know that this is happening, because this can have a lot of value for your organization. So let's talk a bit about third-party software. So the third-party software is used by almost all organizations today. So this type of software helps the organizations to be cost-effective, to reduce costs, to be scalable, and to be able to integrate those solutions with their own software and systems. However, introducing these solutions can potentially lead to security issues. So we are not focusing right now on third-party security software related with security, but in general, okay? I would like to ask, we can start with Luís. Luís, what do you think that are the main risks associated with third parties that we are using? And of course, if you can disclose, how many times did a third party resulted in the exploitation or the identification of vulnerability in your organization?
Sorry, André, you can repeat.
Of course, yes.
I lost the connection a few seconds, sorry.
No worries. So what would you say if I ask, what are the main risks associated with these third-party vendors And if you could disclose how many vulnerabilities have you identified, or how many vulnerabilities have resulted because of using third parties?
Yeah. Let give you a vision. I think that is most transversal for all the companies nowadays. We almost all the software that we use in solutions client facing, there are pieces that are developed by third parties. That way, I can talk in the mobile applications that our clients use at home. For example, the e-commerce portal that is a very well-known multinational company that support this solution, for solutions in the warehouse, things like that. So the software suppliers are in all the components of the critical chain of value components that we have in the company. In the hyper-connected world, on everything on the company needs to be online with very short time to move goods. In our case, food that have short lifetimes. We need to have all these pieces working well. And it's well known too that the vulnerabilities on software or the risks that are created by third parties to the companies are one of the highest risks on the world. In Europe, it's reported by ENISA like number one risk. So when we found this type of vulnerabilities, we have a problem. Why it's a problem? It's not only the question to have a data breach or a stop. It's the how we can correct this vulnerability, don't taking a huge impact in the business. We have some systems that cannot have huge times means to stop. We have small windows to make all these updates and things like that. So we need to identify early, quickly, more soon as possible, trying to identify how we can mitigate the impacts of that vulnerability on the software to maintain our goal. This is the business running well and safe. And yes, we identify this type of vulnerabilities. I cannot give you a number.
Of course, yeah. Of course, yeah, I definitely agree. That's a good approach, and to keep everything updated. That leads me to another question, which is, and Rafael, I would like to ask you now, especially on MIXMOVE. How do you evaluate the third-party risk from the solutions that you use? So what would you say that are the best practices in order to assess the risk that these solutions could represent to your organization? Let's say that you are using a given provider. How do you make sure that this provider can be trusted? And I'd like to ask also if you establish precise security requirements for these vendors, for example.
Yes, we have some security requirements in order to comply with ISO 27001. We need to evaluate each provider, each vendor that we have, and we need to classify the impact of this provider in our solution. And it's really good because based on this impact of this of risk from this supplier on our solution, we can establish different controls. Like we can do reviews regarding security each 6 months or yearly or as needed. Depends on the impact of this provider on our infrastructure or on our solution. And regarding the controls and the practices, we try to comply with some standards in the market like ISO or SOC 2. they are the main ones, the main two standards that we look to our suppliers, and we try to make sure that these suppliers has good security behavior. And we have some forms to ask them and try to do some tests on the infrastructure and make sure that it will controlled risk for us, because it's always a risk, but we can control sometimes, and make sure that if you have some breach on that, the infrastructure will not affect our data. This is one the main point here. Because this is not our data, it's our client data, and it's most important than our data.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely data segmentation and isolating systems into different segments is usually a very good countermeasure as well. So thank you for your insight, Rafael, about third-party risk. And let's bring it on to the other side, the attackers, the ethical hackers side of things. Zezadas, or as you are known in the hacker community, José. As a hacker, how many times have you exploited third-party software? Is it usually more secure than the organization-owned applications? By organization-owned, I mean organization-built software in-house.
It depends. As for a number, yeah, I found some of this type of vulnerabilities. Time to time, it appears. It's always a risk. It always happens and will be happening a lot. As for a risk by itself, it depends on the context, because if we are thinking about, for example, open source library, sometimes people that develop that library do not pay any attention about security, because maybe sometimes it's just an open source project from even the college or something like that. So on those type of third parties, there is almost none security at all. But then there are some other scenarios, as for example, buying a known service from a third party, and on those kind of services, yeah, of course, there is a lot more security than on other types of third parties. So yeah, there could be some dangerous. But yeah, it also depends on the context of the third party that we are evaluating.
Makes a lot of sense. I also agree as a ethical hacker, especially the libraries, things that you mentioned as well. What do you think that would be, also to add to this question, what would be the best countermeasure to keep all the libraries updated, in your opinion? Would be like to make sure that on the pipelines, all of these is like checked, such as Dependabot or other solutions that come to your mind?
Yeah, of course, you can have software that will warn you if you have some software outdated, but we need to think that sometimes there are vulnerabilities that are not known. There could be a group of people that knows about a vulnerability, but the rest of the world doesn't know it. So sometimes if we think like, oh, there is a security patch and I need to do the update, so I'll always be strict to just the security patches, but sometimes just by doing the regular updates, we can also prevent some unknown vulnerabilities. But of course, this is a complex subject, because libraries tend to be more updated than our own code. So time to time, the libraries start to change, and you need to adopt your code. So it's not totally plausible that you could always be on the last versions of your third party. Sometimes you need some time even to test the new version if nothing breaks. So yeah, theoretically, you should update, and of course we know what would be the best practices and the way that we should do the updates. But in the real world, it's not easy, and sometimes there are no ways to update a specific library, because we can be using a library that is not maintained anymore. So it's even a bigger risk, because we have something in our hands that we need to replace, and replacing this at the moment it's difficult. So yeah, we need to evaluate the risk first, and then have our countermeasures.
Yeah, definitely. And the legacy components that you are mentioning are usually very, very painful. I think that we all here have this pain sometimes in our organizations, of course. But yeah, so we are talking about lack of updates, it being one of the main reasons for the third party being a threat to organizations as well as libraries and so on, as a conclusion for the first part of this supply chain roundtable. And also, of course, you didn't explicitly say, José, but also when everything else fails, we can still try to hack it and see if we can get in, right? But we'll get there in the end to the ethical hacking subjects. Talking about third parties, there are two main types, let's say, of third-party software that we can use, if we can classify like this. But we rely on third-party SaaS or cloud-based external hosted third-party by the third party itself on their infrastructure, or it could be on-prem, right? So these solutions can be the ones that can be hosted on the organization infrastructure are not usually so common today. We have a lot of subscription-based, contract-based software that we can use online. But there are some security implications of picking these two types, one of these two types of third-party solutions, such as an example, like Jira Cloud or Atlassian Cloud solution, or on-prem solution, or GitLab, or lots of software that we all use, right? And these are key parts of our software as well, and the way we build our software and we manage our systems and our teams and even our operations, right? So I'd like to ask Luís, what are your key considerations that organizations should take into account when they are deciding between using third-party, cloud-based third-party solutions versus on-prem solutions? What is the rationale here?
Yeah, let me put from side the rationale about if we need to go to cloud or not. There are strategies in companies, and from our side, we have a strategy for cloud first and full. So in our company, when we start a project, we know that will be supported on cloud mainly. The question here in the security perspective, I think that there are different challenges, because in this moment we are losing the control of a lot of things that we can do when there are the solutions on premises. The example is if you need to make a pen test for this software, because the solution is built with different blocks of that cloud provider, and we can think in a SaaS solution for a commerce platform. For example, if you want to verify the code that is developed by your partner to customize that interfaces, like our portal, you need to address this type of evaluations with a third company, you need to have their agreement to make that assessment. You need to ensure that you have, for example, logs that you can analyze, you can monitor the things. So in the end, you are losing a lot of control. And in Portugal, we don't have the tradition to read the small letters of the contracts with these providers, and they are so huge comparing with us that we struggle a lot to impose them the real needs to control, for example, these components. I can give you the example. Today I'm reading a proposal of a contract of one of these biggest SaaS companies, and they're saying you can only make one assessment by year. So I just have one moment in the year to assess the vulnerabilities on my software. Hackers can do all the year. They don't ask. They don't have that obligation in the contract. So we are fighting with different tools and different rules in the same world. So we cannot protect the same way that attackers can looking for us. So I think that we have new challenges in this world. I think that we don't have yet anticipate that in the legal and compliance things. We can have all the ISO certifications, SOC certifications. In the end, the platform can be vulnerable for cross-site scripting, things like that. So we can lose money. We can stop the business with things like that. And we lost a lot of capabilities to evaluate these for supply chain components. So yeah, I don't have a magic answer to this. I'm struggling in fighting to improve this aware in the legal teams, for example. We need more support on the legal part to help in these situations.
Yeah, legal can be a pain sometimes as well. Of course, we all know it. But you raised the very good perspectives on this as well in terms of control, especially over what's happening in these components and how we can actually assess that this third-party solution would work better if it was on-prem or not. Sometimes, Rafael, what is your view on this? And I would like to ask if you test your third-party solutions as well from a security perspective, if you have authorization to do it, and also your view on on-prem third-party solutions versus cloud-based external solutions. Sorry, Rafael, you are muted right now.
This is
Good.
always happen. Regarding the testing on third parties, we in the security perspective, we don't have we have just one supplier that we have a cloud-based solution that we are using. And for this supplier, we can make some tests on specific environment, but it's really restrict tests. And yeah, this is one the most difficult parts of to deal with cloud-based solutions. And regarding cloud-based solution versus on-prem, honestly, it depends a lot. If you have the infrastructure to host it, and if you have the knowledge to maintain and to support this solution, this is one important decision, because if you don't have the knowledge internally, you can struggle with security questions or even with operation questions regarding any platform. The price, it's the second thing, because it's today I can give it a simple. We are using Elastic internally, and we had a on-prem solution, and we migrated to a cloud-based solution because the price was most attractive for us. We didn't have any security reason to do that, but we managed it to host in a most controlled way, hosting it on the same cloud supplier that we have. And well, yeah, regarding these third-party tests and security assessment, it's really difficult. Like, you cannot apply to a test on Azure. You can test just your own infrastructure. We have some controls most regarding disaster recovery and these things. But one strategy that we have, it's try to maintain an active monitoring on not just on our systems, but on our suppliers too, to try to understand if you are secure and if you have some issues or data breaches and everything else.
Thank you, Rafael, from your insights on this. So these two solutions, I definitely agree. The decision on whether to use these cloud-based solutions or on-prem solutions will depend on specific needs and context of some situations, and also priorities for the organization. There are drawbacks on multiple options, but there is no doubt in terms of data security that organizations that want to maintain control over their data, especially critical data, it's usually a better idea to ensure additional control sometimes. So that's one of the takeaways here. So thank you, Luís and Rafael, for approaching this topic. But before we move on to the next one, I would like to ask our hacker and application security analyst, José Moreira. So, José, as a hacker, do you think that on-prem solutions could have more vulnerabilities from an attacker's perspective?
Yeah, I won't say that the on-prem could have more vulnerabilities, because the software will be the same, but it will depend how often you do the updates in your own infrastructure. Of course, if you are on the cloud, that things are free. You also don't need to spend time configuring your own services, because they will be managed by the cloud. But if you don't have regular updates, there could arise some vulnerabilities. And other things that we should look at, it's for example, if it's a service that you don't need to have exposed, so you can have it internally without access to the internet, and then can be more contained. While it could have some vulnerabilities, it will not expose such as a higher risk as having a service, public service. But the vulnerabilities are there, and if we have this kind of services inside our company, for example, there could be another connection inside the network that could get you to that service. And for example, if an attacker gains a remote code execution to that machine that is inside your infrastructure, then the attacker will be right away inside your infrastructure. While on the other end, if it's a cloud, and if there is such a bug that an attacker could gain a remote code execution, as an example, it will not affect your own internal infrastructure, only that cloud. But of course, the impact will be even higher, because it will not affect affect just you, but also the other companies that are using that service.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, it's always about the segmentation, right, on the internal network as well of that component. So we could have a similar situation even if it was on-prem. But me as a hacker as well, I definitely I agree with you on that perspective as well. And especially, but I see when I analyze something. In on-prem third parties, they tend to be more outdated a lot of times, and that could have CVEs that can be exploited, common vulnerability and exposures that are common vulnerabilities affecting the software. So as a one last question for you regarding this topic, what software components or operating system do you think it's usually more vulnerable that you have come across along your career? Like what was the most common CVE, let's say, that you exploited while doing ethical hacking and pen testing and so on?
I would go for the example that it's more public on that matter, and I would say that's the using external dependencies. It could be a JavaScript that you import from any other website. It could be something that will do some designs on your app, or even collect analytics and something like that. And if that CDN or if that third party gets hacked, then you also be hacked. And there are some examples of websites that started to mine bitcoins, and of course that's not supposed to happen. And the worst part on that example is that the company had nothing to do with it. It was a third party that was totally outside of its control, but suddenly it appeared inside their product. So that's one of the main points in the web subject. But there are also some other examples when we are developing, because sometimes we find some library on the internet that does exactly what we need, and we import that library, but we don't have control of that code. And if we just update it without looking at the code, firstly, we should look at the code before importing that library, if it's an open source library, as my example, but also look at the updates and see if there is something malicious in there. And we have examples. The last one, it was with Node, Python, can't remember, but it's always happening, and suddenly you are bumping your project and you are bumping your library versions, and suddenly you have a backdoor on your code without you even knowing.
That's right. That's an interesting perspective as well in terms of the components. Luís, I was looking at your camera as well. Do you have anything to add to this part of discussion, or can we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, from my vision, I think that the Microsoft stack, and essentially the outdated Microsoft stack, it's a problem. I think that nowadays the biggest problem in the companies is the Active Directory. The major attacks that we saw in the different companies in Portugal or Europe or in the world are in the end the impact was huge, because the vulnerabilities that Active Directory can expose or the different services that integrate on Active Directory. And I think that we don't have the right concern about the ring fence, about what is the perimeter of security about on an Active Directory. And we have a lot of supply chain providers and tools that integrate in these pieces of software, and we are escalating the risk in the companies with these solutions. So when we are discussing, I saw José goes for the software that is developed. I'm looking more for infrastructure and the risks that this type of solutions brings to the companies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, I was forgetting what I was to say. Can you repeat your last phrase, because I was focused on that. Sorry, just forget. Well, what was your last phrase? Luís.
No, I'm saying that the Active Directory.
The Active Directory. Okay. I remember. It's because since in your own company you cannot totally control your third party, and that's a question that I have for both of you. Do you think that you can rely on contracts and NDAs? For example, if that third party has a vulnerability, as a security risk or something, some malicious actor gains some privileges there and extract some information, do you think that you can pass the responsibility to the third party?
If you, I can give you answer for that, because we made that exercise when we started to analyze a third-party contractor, and we discuss how much will be the clause of compensation if they make some mistake in the work. And somebody says you need to remember that you are a company that each year has a revenue of 6 billion. So you are so huge for the size of the usual companies in Portugal that nobody can have an insurance or something like that can support and pay you the risk that maybe they are doing for you. So I think that we have a problem on that component. So maybe the providers are so small for us, or not. On the other side, they can support us. So the contracts, it's not enough. The compensation clauses on the contracts are not enough. So we need to have technical controls and mitigations to manage this type of risks.
Thank you. I'm loving that José is starting to ask questions as well. This is a great dynamic. Before we move on, Rafael, do you want to add anything to this topic, the third parties and vulnerabilities and so on? Feel free before we move on.
Yeah, this Active Directory thing, it's really interesting, because when we are using cloud environment like on Azure, it's quite easy to lose control of your environment, because you are dealing with thousands of resource users, groups, and every time you need to improve your active monitoring, because if you don't manage privileged access or password rules, two-factor authentication, and the role-based access control, I didn't experience any data threat yet regarding that, but we already saw some wrong actions inside the organization that we need to manage it and improve our activity monitoring, because it can, as soon as we can control it internally, it's good. But if someone outside the organization or a non-ethical hacker get this information, we can have problem.
Yeah, to add up, I'm not a huge fan of Active Directory. I am a huge fan when I'm hacking Active Directory. So I think that we all agree on these potential problems. But yeah, let's move on to another topic, which is the external security providers. So managed security service providers, MSSPs, are becoming more and more used by organizations today. as they are a comprehensive solution with a range of security services that they can offer to the organization. So those include from defensive to offensive services, consulting, compliance, and more. We are lacking resources in the market right now, and this is something that we are probably feeling on your organizations as well. And I notice even me in the masters in the University of Porto, I feel like the students just go to work and they are going to work to other countries, for example, and we cannot retain talent in Portugal to have good in-house expertise. So this actually contributes to internationally, even internationally, to have more companies relying on external security providers. These outsourced security solutions are becoming more a standard. It's not that they are actually replacing internal teams, especially on large organizations, but they are becoming more standard to improve the security posture in organizations. So, Luís, do you see any risks associated with outsourcing security solutions, like outsourcing your operations to MSSPs? Only a part of it, all of it? What's your takeaway on this? Your perspective on this?
Yeah, we have some risks that are identified. Of course, the companies have challenges in this sector. It's not easy to internalize all the cybersecurity stack, have specialists in all the areas, cover all the fields, and still have people being the Cristiano Ronaldos of this type of thing. So it's not easy to have this inside of the company. So we need to have contractors, third parties working with us in this area. What is the challenge for us? It's to identify the good companies, the companies that are doing the good work. And this is a challenge not only for the companies, but, for example, for the country. I think that Portugal needs to have a policy about that. We need to identify, to have a good evaluation of what are the companies that are good, and have something that say this type of providers are not so good or don't have the skills levels that they are saying that is necessary, or that they are saying that I have. In my experience about this, I'm seeing in the market some companies doing things, for example, using outdated frameworks. How I can accept an external audit with non-conformant signs saying that we are not being aligned with the framework. They are using an outdated version of that framework.
Luís, this leads me to another question that you were approaching, which is, how do you select your provider? How do you establish these security requirements for the external provider?
We are developing a new program for do that, and I'm for this part of the challenges of security. I'm thinking that the companies need to have some way to get good reference for the partners that will be helping us, and how we can get this type of references. For example, having information about external and public events that in pen testing area people are doing, and we can have levels of expertise that are public reviews and by peers. We need to have some way to identify this type of good companies. Other option that we are discussing, for example, is to start to for some areas have a requirement that the companies need to be certified not only by international standards, but for the national seals of National Cybersecurity Center. It can be one way for consulting, for example, SOC operations teams. For pen testing, I'm looking more for external indicators that can be reviewed by peers.
Yeah, now that you talk, Cybersecurity Center of Portugal is doing a great job on and moving on this path as well in order to perform this type of let's say vetting these providers. So that's a good move for our country as well. Rafael, going back to the first question, but on your perspective, which is, do you see any risks associated with externalizing your security, and what are the disadvantages or advantages from your perspective? And I would like to ask as well if you lack resources in house or not. So what's your approach to this topic?
Yeah, well, regarding the risks, yes, we have some risks here, but the most difficult part is to select these partners regarding security, because we have some new partners in the market, we have old partners in the market, and they have different approaches. We have some big partners, but sometimes they are really, really expensive for some organizations. And they, as Luís said, sometimes they are using old frameworks and some things that you don't understand why they are offering security consulting, but they are using strange and old approach. For us, yes, for the company as MIXMOVE, looking to these partners, it's really important. We don't have 100 or 1,000 employees at the company, and to growth, we need to select the right partners regarding security, because we don't have any of these knowledge people in place. And well, I believe depending of the area of the security, like network infrastructure or even active monitoring or security monitoring as pen testing, we need to look at the market. We have some tech radars to go to the market, understand the companies, but we don't have a recipe to that yet. We are trying to build it.
That's a good move already, and you're starting to take security very seriously, which is very important, especially on your industry. Yeah. So to close the topic, José, I would like to ask you. Let's put it like this: would it be easier for you to hack a company that is starting on security? It would be easier to hack the company, or let's say to find vulnerabilities in the company, if it started by relying on an external provider, or by the company having, let's say, a couple of people in their first internal security team. What's your view on this?
Yeah, that's a complex topic. Hiring MSSP, it's not going to do any kind of miracles. So first of all, you should always take a look at your code to prevent vulnerabilities in the first place. But since you are relying in a MSSP, they should have way more knowledge from that they got from other clients and other situations, that they can transpose that to your own company and bring you high level of security maturity. But sometimes the vulnerabilities are there. MSSPs sometimes cannot cover all the company scope, so there always can be some kind of vulnerabilities. And on the other side, if you have your own security team in your company, it could be a little bit more difficult to develop good practices and secure your scope if you don't have many members to do the work. And in those kind of situations, there could arise some vulnerabilities because you cannot get to every of them. But since you are on your own company, you have some leverage because you know how your own company works. You have way more direct contact with your own teams. And on those situations, even if you have some kind of vulnerabilities, you could fix them way quicker because you have the leverage of the internal knowledge.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just feel that companies that have no budget nowadays to, hire an extra member to the team, and they don't do anything about security, relying on an external service to identify at least the vulnerabilities that they have exposed, usually a good approach, right? So for a company that is starting, of course, I think in my opinion, both approaches are definitely necessary to bring an attacker's external perspective view and external knowledge and expertise as well, but also having the right internal resources. But we are having, like I said in the beginning, we are having a problem in the market in terms of human resources, the qualified human resources that all our companies and all our organizations need to win this race, right? That we are all this war. I'll say that we are all battling. So.
Sorry. And I think that they are not totally exclusive because you can have an inside team and also have some external services. And for example, if you are a small company and you're still trying to grow, at the times that you have more maturity and the skills and the money to increase your own security, you can decrease the services from the MSSPs. But of course, I think it's always good to have both of them, because even for pen tests, which will be the more generic test that could be done, it's always good to have an external auditor looking at our own code and infrastructure, because we, as inside members of the company, we get tunnel vision and we already know by hand what we are looking for. And having someone from outside could have a new eyes on the scope and find more things that usually an internal team could find.
Yeah, 100%. Luís, you want to add something here?
Yes, because I agree with this opinion, and I want to give you the vision that one of the things that I'm trying to do is to have the best partner for each action that we need to do in this ecosystem of protecting a company. What I'm seeing is difficult to have one partner that is good for everything in the company. It's good for consulting service, it's good for SOC operations, it's good for pen testing. No, I need to have a diversity of partners. This is different. It's difficult to sell internally because, you are managing different teams, different people, but give you a good ecosystem to exchange ideas, to test different opinions, and focus on this part that is testing vulnerabilities, testing weaknesses in your systems. I agree with José. We need to have different persons, different visions, different ideas testing the things. Because if you are always making tests with the same company, with the same team, always making the same type of scans, the same type of assets, you are losing the big picture of the company, and your attack surface it's being still exposed. So we need to have an ecosystem that can bring to you balance between, like we say, checks and balances. We need to trust and verify things like that in our security approach.
Super interesting. Rafael, you want to add something here?
No. I like this. Luís said it's pretty that I think about it, because it's important to have an outside view of your posture, and it's really important. I believe if you have just an internal team, sometimes this team will not doing the work as a fresh person inside the organization. This is it's really different. Even when we are developing some code, if we test the code that we developed, sometimes we lost something. In the security perspective, it's the same.
Okay, so I think that we are all aligned and we all agree on this topic. All right, so moving on to the last topic, which is ethical hacking. And ethical hacking is a way for companies to stay ahead of the attackers, sometimes by identifying vulnerabilities. A lot of companies have been buying defensive security, they are buying firewalls, and I'm pretty sure that on your companies you have that as well. Of course, you have EDRs that work very well and other solutions, but there are companies that only rely on defensive security and they don't actually care, or they are afraid of bringing the offensive security side of things to the organization. I'm not just saying externally, but also internally, because they are afraid of doing this sometimes. But we are seeing that as cybercrime becomes more lethal and more unpredictable, there's a growing shift in having well-defined policies to report vulnerabilities, pen testing, bug bounty programs, offensive security, and bring the attacker's perspective, either with internal teams or external providers. So there's this race to stay ahead of the attackers, and ethical hacker can help to identify these vulnerabilities and reduce the risk of exploitation. So I'd like to start again with Luís, as usual. How hard is it to make decision makers to increase their budget for offensive security, or to even trust ethical hackers to be playing as attackers, doing a critical job in the times that we live on?
Okay, this is a challenge, and I have the experience of work in the public sector and the private sector, and I saw the difference of mindsets of the C-level of each of these type of organizations. Let's see. I think that the first problem is the word hacker. When you say we will contract a hacker, everybody have afraid of that because we are contracting a bad actor. I think it's something like that that don't help us on the first of all. The second is the question that everybody wants to buy technology that solves all the problems. So you sell the idea that everybody can buy a scanner that will identify all the vulnerabilities. And this is something that is in the minds of the people. Why I need to contract services if I can bought a software that will find everything, that have a nice dashboard with light of high-end critical things. And I think that is a mission for the people that is managing this type of responsibilities of the companies that need to educate the decision level, the managers of the companies, that there are differences, and bringing the attacker's perspective to the defense can help us to identify and anticipate some points that the traditional and by the book rules maybe can fail. The other things that we are doing, or mindset that I'm sharing, is that this human verification is the checks, is the moment that you are verifying if everything that you applied by the policies, by the technologies, and everything it's working like we expected. It's the test. Like you make drills for the fires and things like that. We make drills for the IT solutions. If for that we use ethical hackers. I think that we need to work a lot in Portugal about this awareness. For example, it's almost prohibited to talk about bug bounties. If you say this word in the company, everybody looks to you, saying what crazy word you are saying. When we are talking about responsible disclosure, everybody says why, and I think that's a problem because our law saying that the test of a vulnerability it's a crime. So there is a mindset that we will punish everybody. The long arm of the law will capture all the guys that are doing these things that we know is not true. We need to work with people that know how to make the attacks to better defend and to prosecute to the attackers that really are doing the bad things in this cyberspace.
Yeah, we have a lot to do. I'm not sure if you have seen the news in Belgium in terms of responsible disclosure. That was a huge step for them, and I hope that we can get there soon as well.
Yes, but let me bring. I think that we need to work in the national strategy for the cybersecurity that we'll be discussing this month in Portugal. We need to put these topics in the agenda. We need to change the way of these things are being discussed and what is being shared. For example, I'm using this sentence. The Portuguese software houses are so good. How many CVs you know about Portuguese software? There are no vulnerabilities disclosure, for example. You have a lot of softwares that covers hospitals, municipalities, things like that, and nobody's disclosed the vulnerabilities about the software.
Yeah,
we need to do something about that.
Yeah, that's something that scares me a lot, and our mission in the Ethiack is actually to help those to identify vulnerabilities on those components as well. That's something that we care a lot about, and that's something that we want to prevent from happening, because this, in terms of making decision makers understand this problem, it's sometimes hard to wake them up for this topic. It's because we know that it will happen. We just don't know when, and we need to be ready and have a strategy to be able to respond effectively and contain the attacks as well. So there's a lot to do, especially as a country as well, in terms of responsible disclosure, and that's something that we are working on as well. Rafael, in your case, how hard do you find to increase budget for security in general, or was it hard for MIXMOVE to trust ethical hackers to identify vulnerabilities on your organization, or was it a smooth process in your case?
Honestly, I was quite lucky in that case because was in a period that we are building some disaster recovery exercise regarding our infrastructure and platform, and I compare these two behaviors. Like we are attacking our infrastructure to broke it and recover it. We should do it regarding our security as well. Our CTO was really open to help me with the management team to increase our budget to security tools, not just to security tools, security partners, and security training for the team. And it was yes, I was really lucky because I got help in the first uh, uh, try.
Perfect. That's good to hear that there are some easier situations that happen in some companies and that allow us to do our jobs correctly and how it should be. All right. So some final questions to José. So José, when you are approaching a target as a security researcher, as an ethical hacker, where do you usually focus first to, let's say, to find a vulnerability, the first vulnerability? What's your methodology to approach that as an ethical hacker?
First, we need to know what's the big price on that company. For example, if it is the data of the clients that they own, if it's the infrastructure, if it's some kind of improper intellectual property, we should first know what we want to get as a higher price, and then point for that. And in those processes, always think outside the box and think how you could convert sometimes some types of vulnerabilities that could leverage you some more accesses, some more privileges, in the way that we could get inside the company or inside the data and exfiltrate the data, so we could prove a point that an attacker could also do the same. And there is always someone better than us. So if I'm able to do this, so you can picture what someone with more knowledge can even do. So yeah, that's the focus. Always touch where it hurts.
Yeah, I agree. In my methodology, I usually go to the core of the target, let's say the core application, find the most complex feature and just try to understand where it could break somehow. So yeah, that's definitely a good approach to find a vulnerability. Another question would be, what, like in terms, we were talking about defensive security. So as a hacker that has a lot of headaches, as I can assume with the web application firewalls, do you think that web application firewalls in general can be easily bypassed or not really these days?
Once you bypass it once, then all of them will be easy. So the worst part is just finding the bypass, and from there you're free to test your vulnerabilities. Of course, for a first level, for an entry point on security, at least it could slow down an attacker, but it's just like a lock that you could use on your bike. You can use it. Maybe it's going to be secure, and other attackers will not be interested in that one because they know that they have some security, but it's not enough. It's not 100% secure, and bad things can happen.
Yeah, and I like to add that we cannot have a bypass sometimes today, but there could be one tomorrow, right? And that's something that we need to be paying attention as organizations. as well, right?
Yeah, there's always people with more knowledge than you, and some people also share some vulnerabilities that do not share with the rest of the world. So yeah, things can happen.
Yeah. Okay, and one last final question for you about ethical hacking. So what was the most critical vulnerability that you ever found? So I think that the public is always curious to see what was the most critical vulnerability that we hackers ever found. So without obviously disclosing information related with the targets, responsibly, can you describe the story behind the most critical vulnerability that you ever found?
Of course, I think like Luís and Rafael will maybe identify with this one, but of course, leverage code execution on the Active Directory, it's like the holy grail of internal audit. And times to times, it's not easy to get there. I think like my rate would be 100% of success getting to admin. But the funniest part of that is cooperating with your colleagues and share the knowledge and bringing up each other vulnerabilities and fitting them together so you can construct a chain and you get to the holy grail that would be the Active Directory. So that would be the most interesting vulnerability. But of course, there are other types of vulnerabilities. In the web context, it will be gaining some kind of remote code execution also. But on this kind of scopes, for me, the most interesting bugs would be access to sensitive data. That's always good when you can get to passwords, even if they are hashed. And yeah, extracting information can also hurt for the company. So it's always interesting to find them.
Thank you, José. That was great. Active Directory, of course, it's challenging, but when it breaks, it breaks. I definitely agree. All right, so let's close the round table by one. I have one last question for you before we move on to the Q&A. So people watching, feel free to drop a few more questions. We have some here already that we will be showing in a bit, but I wanted to close it up. I would like to ask if you would say in 30 seconds, each one of you, what could organizations do right now to stay more safe nowadays with the rise of cybercrime, especially medium to large organizations? What would you say? And feel free to add anything that you want extra if you want. So let's start with Luís, as usual, and then we'll move on to Rafael and then José to close it up.
Okay, thank you, André. Let me be quickly. I think that the first thing is to improve the capabilities to detect and respond to incidents and mitigate. I think that we need to go to an alert level that you first stop the threat. You need to have the empowerment to block a connection, to stop a server, to stop the network in some place of the business before a threat can target your full organization. I think that is the first mindset. The second is test, verify your attack surface, detect your weakness points, make a good analysis, continuous analysis about your posture, essentially in the external view of your organization. And this is very essential if you are using cloud services, because it's more difficult. There are different challenges. So these are my 2 points for this moment.
Awesome. Rafael, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, this one, how to respond for incident. It's the most important. You need to stop it as soon as possible. And the second one, it's active monitoring. This is really important to try to prevent some different behaviors on your infrastructure or on your code or on your systems. Auditing, they are really important things to be the first one to know what happened on your infrastructure or on your platform. And the active monitoring is the most important thing for me when I'm talking about security and operations.
Great, thank you, Rafael. José, what do you have to say?
Yeah, just trust the ethical hackers. We like to exploit things, but of course we are not malicious, and we can point how to exploit the vulnerabilities, but we can also point how to mitigate them, because we know how attackers used to do it. So we can also give you good recommendations to fix it.
Yes, I agree. We need to have more organizations to understand what we do. It's not black magic. It's way different than that. And yeah, we were talking about demystifying this word. And yeah, I hackers, in my opinion, like we are here to help people and organizations. We are hackers. We are not crackers. We don't do this for the money or to leverage our power with the weak. Right. So, and for our own profit. So that's not us. That's cracking. Right. And that's something that we are doing here. All right. So let's move on to the questions. We have a couple of questions in here. Regarding, let's go back to the on-prem versus cloud. When choosing what to keep on-prem and on the cloud, does that data classification take a strong word? You can see the question here. Anyone wants to go ahead and give a take on this? I'll assume that it's basically about when José in the chat from the participants say this is meaning classifying the security level of data, right? The confidentiality of data.
Yeah.
So, Luís, you want to go ahead? Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I can bring a view of a company that have a strategy to go to the cloud. So for us, it's the same to have the information or have a data classification with a label with a high level of sensibility that information can go to the cloud. What we need to do is to have the adequate controls to protect that information that is stored by a third party. And of course, the challenge that we discussed early, they are all in the table. There are a lot of different technical controls that we need to address. There are compliance controls that you need to add to the contracts and things like that. We need to manage that. I think that cloud nowadays, it's inevitable. The companies are going to there and they cannot fight against this type of things. So we need to adequate our risk to this type of challenges.
Thank you, Luís. I'm not sure if you, José or Rafael, if you want to add anything to this point. Feel free if you want. Okay, so let's. We are running out of time to the final part of this webinar. Let's pick another of the questions. For example, the last one. Does a strategy for security should include upcoming trends as a vector of threat? Has been predicting these trends. So being one step ahead and aware of the ever-changing landscape, what you guys recommend? So what do you recommend to be able to predict these upcoming trends as vectors for our organizations. So who wants to, maybe Rafael or José, one of you want to add to answer this?
Yeah, maybe if you are a bit ahead, you can gain some leverage and be prepared. But of course, we never know how the attack is going to be. So we could not have totally sure if that prevention will be effective. So yeah, it's always good to have that kind of prevention, but do not rely only on that.
All right. We have one live question that just dropped. Humberto Luís is asking, should also the company scanning the infrastructure for hacking commands inside of the network?
Yeah, I would say that is also part of the mitigations when we find a vulnerability that is following up that vulnerability and check if it has already been exploited by other attackers. So at least you can understand if there was already any kind of compromise and what have been compromised.
All right, and maybe one last. There was actually in the beginning. What SCA tools do you recommend? Anyone wants to answer this one? And from this, I think that there's missing an N. It's scanning tools, or is it the supply chain security related tools?
I believe it's
yeah.
software composition analysis.
Yeah,
I
recall it's static analysis based tools. Yeah. Okay. Rafael, you want to go ahead with this one?
Yeah, Sneak. It's a good tool to go to your libraries and check it if everything is updated. You have any vulnerability, but yeah, this is a good one. But you have quite a lot of at the market doing the same. Dependable can be one of this type of tool. It's not specifically that, but do the same of Sneak like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sneak helps a lot as well, so that's definitely a good recommendation for that. All right, so I think that we can close the Q&A part of this, and I would like, as the moderator, to thank you all for coming as well, and to be able to have this discussion, this open discussion here with every single one of you. So thank you so much for coming. It was a great pleasure. So right now we're going to bring George here. George, you're back.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I think it was really, really amazing. I have been listening to you all, and there are some nice questions also in the comments. I think we can close this session, this roundtable. I want to thank you, André. Thank you, Rafael, José, and Luís, for the amazing knowledge. And feel free, everyone, to follow us on Ethiack, on the social media. To close, I have some announcements to do. So bear with me for some slides, and then we can close the session. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Ethiack. Just exactly. Okay, so let's do it. So the idea, so I just wanted to basically talk a little bit about Ethiack for the end of this roundtable, and for the ones that are not familiar with Ethiack, what we do basically prevention. We do that by doing autonomous ethical hacking, as we call it. And basically the idea is exactly how can we protect and how can we prevent cyber attacks to happen on digital systems. And here the main problem, and we talked about this in this in this roundtable is basically that we are in the middle of an era that is digital, and we work online, we work agile, we push code every day, and we work remotely, and this makes our infrastructures really big. And if we talk about supply chain that exponentially grows, this makes most of our infrastructure exposed attack surface unknown, and that is a big problem that enterprises have, and we try to do that by scanning all the infrastructure and understanding what is exposed to the online, right? And that allow us to manage our attack surface easily. The main problem, and we talked about this, I took that takeaway also from this webinar, is that we need more testing, right? And the problem with testing is that mostly we can do it or either pen testing or bug bounties, which is the forbidden word, as we said here in Portugal. But basically the problem with this solution is that they are very expensive and usually they are not frequent enough, right? So we do like one pen test a year. And the problem with scanning is still very noisy. So we have mostly 45% of false positives in today's scanners. And basically security analysts, they get a little bit lost in all these vulnerabilities that are identified by scanners. And that's where Ethiack comes in. So basically the autonomous ethical hacking is not only automatic, right? For us, we differentiate automatic with autonomous. And what we do here is that we developed some artificial hacking. So that is way more than a scanner, and we will see in a minute. But the idea is we can do attack surface management and testing continuously to the exposed as a black box testing and to exposed assets that are on the internet. And then we also have ethical hacking, which can go in depth on the digital infrastructures, and that complements artificial hacking. So instead of us doing a pen test per year, we can do multiple pen tests every year, and the hackers can focus exactly on the vulnerabilities that the machines didn't find, which improves a lot the accuracy of the scanner and also the continuity of the testing, right? And the idea is how we learn with the ethical hackers every day for our machines. So I'm not going to be very specific here, but the idea of artificial hacking is that we are much more than a scanner. So basically we identify vulnerabilities with a low false positive rate. We have less than 1% in our automatic solution. And we can do that because we use proof of vulnerability. We also have technology that allow us to understand what changes in your infrastructure. So we are not always overcharging your infrastructure. We understand and we scan it as it grows or as it changes. And we have advanced security testing modules in our automatic. We also have a concept that we call instant knowledge propagation, and that only what we believe is that everyone needs to be protected in a collaborative way. So if all of our clients and users, they benefit each other, because if we find a vulnerability in one of them, we automatically will test in the other ones. And that's what is instant knowledge propagation. Then we have ethical hacking, and that, it's basically with hackers like José Moreira, like André, like other that they are on our crowd. And here we use a crowd of ethical hackers, such as bug bounty hunters. But the idea here is that it's a mix between pen test and bug bounty, and we do vetting on these hackers. What allow us is that we allow us to get skills from worldwide, which is not possible with internal teams. That's something that we also discussed here in this roundtable. This allows us to be, the testing is the most creative and logic, because the machine already found most of the CVEs and most of the basic vulnerabilities that we can find. So we can really go in depth with the human hacking hours. And we have really good talent hackers that have discovered vulnerabilities in big organizations, right? So the idea here is we have two plans. We have machine and symbiotic. The machine is, you can get already secure with only the artificial hacking, but you can also work with us on the symbiotic plan, which you have a bank of hours that you can use to launch multiple pen tests every day, and you can launch pen tests in days. Okay, so if you want to know more, you can reach out to me. I will show you, but the idea is exactly that. We do in our Ethiack portal, we do attack surface management and vulnerability identification, and you can see here a report submitted by our automatic part, we call Genesis, the first artificial hacker, and every technical report comes with steps to reproduce, description, impact, and also suggested mitigations, how to mitigate those vulnerabilities. I'm not going to go in depth because the idea here was not to talk about Ethiack. We have some businesses that already trust us, such as MIXMOVE and Sonae and others. But the idea here that I want to announce you is that we are launching in May the new version of the product. And I wanted to let you know, all of our viewers, that we are launching this new version of the product. It will be completely new, the UI UX interface, and you can have a view here that is supposed to be confidential yet, but I just put it here for you to see how our user interface is completely new. You will have the machine hacking, and you have the different pen tests, and you also have a risk score, and we'll have also the severity of vulnerabilities, and you can classify assets according to their importance, which will give you like this risk score based on the severity of the vulnerabilities in the assets that you are being identified. So we are basically opening this sign up for the new portal. So if you want to try the old version, you can sign up on portal@ethiack.com. If you want to test be a beta user, you can also contact me. Is my email here. Yeah, we are going to announce this soon. So just follow us and we'll keep you posted. And thank you so much for coming to this roundtable. We are Ethiack. Once more, thank you for all of the panelists that come here today. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.